This is IdeaSquare, the innovation hub at CERN. One question we get asked more than almost any other is, why do you have a London double-decker here? How did you bring it here? This is the story of the red bus.
Lovely. I so loved these when I was a kid. As soon as they slowed down, you could jump on, jump off. No need to wait for a bus stop. I'm not sure anybody actually wants to admit that it was them. So it was either me or Marcus, or just something that came out of nowhere into the middle of the conversation that got pounced on. Before we moved into this newly renovated building, we had a pilot space in an old building on the other side of the campus. When we first saw the building, we were wondering if you really could have students working there. It was old, dusty and grey, but there was an existing structure within it which was interesting in both its size and shape. It had the kind of stairs up the side of it that resembled the very early versions of the double-decker buses, the Routemaster's ancestor, if you like. So someone from the team just suggested, why not prototype the bus idea here? So you add a coat of bright red paint, black for the wheels, and you have something that stands out very distinctly from all the drab surroundings. Then we made a real test out of it. The students loved it so much that the old industrial hall around them no longer seemed so shabby. It wasn't long before we realised that people were coming by from other buildings and stopping to look. Then we started talking seriously about getting a real bus. And it turned out to have much more of an emotional appeal than we'd originally thought. The official Atlas tie. Obviously you're wearing a tie yet?
No, I tend to do my best to avoid it. Everything's so organised, but I wouldn't expect anything less from a scientific, location. Thank you very much, Chris. It's very, very kind of you. And I can only give you paint, I'm afraid.
Good.
That's
what we need.
Smaller tins there.
Lovely.
Right, I'll grab a multicolour jacket and a rain jacket. My first thought really was, what on earth do I want one for? Usually I can kind of get it. Why a laboratory and a science research centre wanted one was my first thought. There's all kinds of stories behind them and where they've gone. I think I've sold Routemasters to around about 40 different countries. You're running vehicles that people instantly have an affinity to. They remember going with their grandparents through the Christmas lights, or perhaps visits to London with their mum and dad. Again, you're driving an icon, you're driving a legend, whereas people going to work on a Monday morning on a service bus are unlikely to write in and say how much they enjoyed the ride. Let's take a quick look on 2405. We'll start one up for you, show you the system. Yeah. Where we cover the foot with a foot brake to make sure it doesn't roll on. We turn the ignition on. And she cuts in, and now she's ready to drive. As simple as that.
During the renovation of this building, when we were designing the interiors for it, one of the key parameters was that it should be modular and it should be as flexible as possible. And that's why we've used these container structures, which we can arrange and rearrange when the need arises. In this context, the idea of having a meeting room or a couple of meeting rooms on wheels grew quite attractive, as it would be even more easily movable around than the container structures. And the more we researched on the topic, the less crazy of an idea it became to get an actual double-decker bus. IdeaSquare is not only about creating new ideas, it's about bringing them to life. It is about turning your ideas into tangible prototypes. We bring in master-level students, interdisciplinary teams, tackle societal issues with a design process. In essence, that means that to make prototypes in which could have a significant impact in our daily lives. The Routemaster is an excellent example of the very same. It takes into account in its design the perspectives of all of its users, from drivers to passengers, from conductors to mechanics. And it includes multiple different technical innovations which were far ahead of its time when it was taken into use.
Just getting the red bus here was a fascinating journey in itself. But for the students who are using the bus now, the journey has just begun.
Some like a smart MG, or for bonny army lorry, they'd lay them down and deem such means of locomotion seem rather dull to us, the driver and conductor of a London omnibus.